All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. I'm joined by a gentleman with some incredible stories that has tons of insight to share. He just brought me down to Detroit, and I was on a television show recently because of him. So right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran has faced struggles transitioning from active duty back to normal civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. The easiest way to reach out to VetLife is to do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kurt David, a former professional basketball player, an executive producer, an accomplished author, a speaker. I mean, the list could just go on and on and on, but I don't want to steal all of his shine. So Kurt, for the people that don't know you, were you born and raised here in Michigan? And let's start to create your story.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, James. First of all, I laugh when people talk about professional basketball because that was 30 pounds ago. I don't go by years, I go by pounds. But for me, it all starts with the foundation, right? And my foundation was the family that I grew up in. And I grew up in northern Michigan, Gaylord, Michigan. 6 kids. There was 8 of us in one house between 2 parents and 6 kids. And the foundation was this, that we had 1 bathroom in the house for 8 of us. So you learn early on in life that life is not all about you, right? You got 8 people, 1 bathroom, growing up in northern Michigan, small community. And the best part about it was I think that, my mom was a teacher in a private school, and my dad was director of social services. So both giving back type industries. In other words, they both gave back to what they were doing. So early on, I learned it wasn't all about me, right? And learned that, they give back, they continue to give back. All 6 of us kids went to that private school, which was nice. I graduated with 60 kids in my class, so very intimate, very small. All 6 of us kids were on athletic scholarships, and 2 of us played professionally.
Wow.
So from the one family, right? Imagine that growing up. Extremely competitive, extremely brushing our teeth, a wiffle ball in the backyard, basketball, football, whatever we could find in the neighborhood. It was constant all the time. So it served us well. And, I don't know how my parents clothed and fed us, to be honest. I mean, I'm 6'9". I got a brother 6'7", another brother 6'6". My sisters are tall. We did have one run to the litter, though. She was only 5'6", but she ran track at Central Michigan University. She was our track runner. The rest of us were basketball. But it was a great upbringing, and that was my foundation. And to me, that set the tone for the rest of my life because, as you well know as well, that sports is not just about the sport itself, it's about the lessons of life. And boy, did we learn a lot of lessons, good and bad, right, as a result of that. I think the biggest thing for me was having the opportunity to realize that, when I was in high school, I was 6'8", score, jumped well. And one of the things that I realized is that, I have an opportunity to play beyond high school, which is exciting, right? And when I had the opportunity to decide which college it was, could I go to a bigger college? Yeah, I could play at a bigger college. I could go to, big Division I. I could look at, different places that I was being recruited, but I wanted to play right away. So I decided to go to Saginaw Valley State, started as a freshman, came in as a freshman starting, which was what I wanted. But one of the things that happened was that I realized through this was that I am not just the only one that's pretty good out there, right? You realize early, the higher level you go, there's other people out there that are just as good as not better, right? And even at that level, being a Division II level, as I progressed, I realized, there's a lot of people that are working really hard that maybe weren't as good as me talent-wise, but they're working harder than I am. And that was an aha moment for me. It really caused me to realize, I had it pretty easy up to that point, right? I was relying on my abilities and my skill, and my work ethic wasn't quite where it needed to be to get to the next level.
Where did you fall in the line of children? Were you the eldest? Did you have older brothers and sisters? Where did you fall in that order? Because it sounds like you have an incredibly competitive family, which is great. I mean, competition strives to make you better. Yeah. It's good for you. Where did you fall in the line?
Well, I was the tallest, so I got that going for me. But I was third oldest. I have an older brother, an older sister, who she was the run to the litter. She was the 5'6". She's now in Singapore. She has a fitness studio over in Singapore. Been over there for 20 years. And then I was third oldest. And so probably the most talented out of all of us, out of the 6, I have to admit this, is my younger brother. He was 6'7". He was a shooting guard at 6'7", so he was like a 2-man, as they call it in basketball. And he was an All-American in college, played at Northern Michigan University. He played quite a few years professionally. His claim to fame was that he was playing overseas in Germany, and he tell me about, his team. He was 6'7", playing shooting guard. He had a 6'11" teammate that was like a small forward and 2 7-footers in the post. And I remember asking my brother Kyle, I said, well, how did you guys ever lose? He says, we don't. I said, makes sense. Well, partway through the year, he started telling me about this 6'11" guy. He said, boy, this guy's pretty good. He says, I thought I was good. And he said, this guy's pretty good. I said, really? He says, yeah, Duke's over here, UCLA, Kentucky, everybody's over here recruiting him to play basketball. I said, wow, he must be pretty good. Well, then 2 weeks before the NBA draft, my brother goes, hey, my teammate's not going to college. And I said, what do you mean? He's 19 years old. He says, no, he's getting drafted in the NBA. My brother was teammates with Dirk Nowitzki.
Oh my God.
His final year in Germany. So I said, well, I guess he is a little bit better than you are.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
That guy's not bad.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, from birth, you basically got to witness how competitive your older brother was, older brother and older sister were.
Correct.
It put a great spirit in you from a young age. Like you said, you're battling over everything at that point. I grew up with a cousin that was close to me, and man, anything we did, it was learning to be your best. And I think that's an important life skill for people. I think that's what team sports can do for you and competition in general, because it makes you try to figure out what your best is. And if you give halfway effort, you get halfway results.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether it be sport or whatever it is, right? As a singer, as a an actor, whatever it is that you might be, understanding that, hey, it is a competition, right? You want to do your best. And really the best competition is with yourself. How do you get yourself better? And I think one of the biggest things that I learned is that, I'm very, very grateful that my mom was a teacher at this school, because we had the keys to the gym literally anytime we wanted. Anytime. And that was a huge factor for us, that we could, there were 6 of us, so we'd all go in the gym or call a bunch of buddies and say, hey, we're going to the gym Christmas night after we open the presents. Let's go play, right? And we were. And that was one of our, that was one of my models, was that how many people are working out on Christmas? Right? Because I want to have that edge. And so we fortunately had the keys to the gym. We got into the gym. We could work out individually or, get guys in there to play. And so it was very fortunate to be able to do that. And even coming home from college, even coming home from playing overseas, right? It was good to be able to have access to that gym to be able to work out like this. I mean, you get it, because having access to a facility, a top-ranked facility, is very important for people's progress as an athlete especially.
And really, you're growing up in a generation where we went outside and played all the time. I mean, you're a little bit older than I am, and it's like we're always out there playing. Like me and my cousin, we would love to go outside and throw a ball for hours on end. Nowadays, I feel like there's so much stimulation, that you can get from your tablet or a video game or things like that. There's not a lot of kids with that same spirit. There's not a lot of kids on Christmas that are going to go out and they're going to go into the room and beat on their craft in that competitive nature, just because that's what they desire to do.
Yeah.
You don't want to sit down and play a video game. You want to get outside and throw the ball around. You know what I mean?
It's night and day. It really is. And I don't know if it's because of access of opportunities of different type. I mean, like right now there's so much technology, there's opportunity with technology. But I remember often going out in our driveway, shoveling snow to shoot baskets, right? In our boots and even gloves, right? You put your gloves on, you get so cold after a while, and I'm still shooting, right? And now it's like, I talk to our kids, I'm like, hey, I want to go outside and shoot. There's no snow on the driveway. Oh no, it's cold, right? It's like, so?
Yeah, it was just a different period of life. There was a different level of grit. There was a different level of what people would deem as work ethic. You know what I mean? Because things have gotten so easy now and so convenient now that I feel like it's slightly weakened the culture in a certain sense, because you're just not willing to endure things that you don't have to. You know what I mean? Like, wait, why do I have to be cold if I can sit in here, be nice and toasty, and throw this video game on? When back then it was like an honor. You wanted to do it.
Yeah.
You didn't think about the fact that it was gonna be cold. You thought about, I want to go play. And something about being a competitive person, it consumes you. You know what I mean? It usually spills it over into most of your life, and that's probably true with your story too. If you have that kind of competitive fire, it doesn't matter if we're going to sit down and play a game of cards. I'm going to try my hardest to beat you, and you're going to try your hardest to beat me. And I think that is a very healthy thing for people to have. I think it can consume you, and it can destroy you if you can't handle loss, if you can't process the things that come with being a competitor. But it's such a healthy thing to have in society. When we start talking about, and I don't want to go off on too far of a tangent here because I care about your story, but like participation awards and just, hey, everybody's a winner. It's like, that's not life. Everybody's not a winner.
I'll never forget the first time I was sitting in our daughter's gym class in elementary school, and they had like a jump rope competition, right? And I remember by the time the competition was over, there were really, everybody was a winner type attitude, right? Everybody's a winner. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, wow, not everybody is a winner in the sense of everybody has their own attributes to be a winner. Absolutely, 100%, right? But not everybody is a winner. And those that work the hardest, and it was sad for me to see those kids, our daughter being one of them, that worked extremely hard on her jump roping to be acclimated with the others, saying everybody's a winner. And it was really my aha moment of, wow, what are we doing here? To back up a little bit, you talked about the softness or the change today. And I'll give you a great example of that. The way I started off talking about 8 of us with 1 bathroom. Think about that. In a middle-class family today, if your kids had to share a bathroom with 8 people in a house, they'd be appalled. They'd be like, I'm moving out. This is abuse, right? Literally.
They'd be calling CPS on you.
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
believe that they're putting 8 children in 1 bathroom? What kind of family is that?
Yeah, middle-class family, right? I mean, you make the income, you can have a bigger, more. But it's just kind of the attitude. And it was just, and I don't want to take away from what's happening today, because there's a lot of advancement, there's a lot of opportunity, and I think part of it is helping people to be the best they can be. And I think to me, that's what's gotten taken away. Like, I'm a father of 3 kids, and my wife and I can share this publicly. My wife and I have an 18-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old daughter, and a 3-year-old son, right? Same wife. I always have to joke with people, same wife. So we had a little surprise 3 years ago that we didn't plan on. But it's interesting to see because, I almost feel like as a parent, it's like, man, if I failed them, to not get them to really work hard, if they're not working hard, really, that's on me. I need to really do a better job of making sure they're learning how to work hard.
Because like you said, in life, I mean, we're not all winners. We can be. You can find things within yourself that bring out your best. You can go conquer this world. You can chase dreams. You can be motivated. But you can also suck at things. You can also not give your best effort. You can also sit around and be lazy. And if you expect the same treatment as the person that put in all the work and effort, that's unrealistic.
It is.
The people that put the time and the effort in, they're going to achieve more than you because they're putting the work in, right? So we need to just shift the way that our perspective views something like that and not say it's not fair that they were the winner. We need to say, what do I have to do, or what did they do different than I did that allowed them to be successful? And now obviously there's natural attributes that you would have towards the game of basketball that I'll never have, but there's going to be different ventures where I may have advantage over you. And what we need to look at is like, how do we achieve our best? And be honest with ourselves. Are we actually pursuing our best, or do we want things dumbed down or brought down to an easier level so that we can be winners?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't ever want to be in a headlock from you. I know that for a fact, right? Because I 6'9" or not, I would not want to be in a headlock from you. But that said, I think one of the things too, James, is that really you think about progress and you think about how to improve things. I relied on my abilities very young. In other words, I had height, right? You can't coach height, as they say. I had some natural abilities as far as speed and jumping and some skills that I developed, but I really didn't know how to work hard. And for me, that was my aha moment, was learning how to work harder.
When did that happen?
I think it really happened, that was probably my sophomore year in college, when I realized that everybody else was working harder than I was, that I came in kind of like thinking I'm a bag of chips and then some, starting as a freshman. And then I realized, boy, people are passing me up. I'm not getting the same results. And it's because I hadn't developed that work ethic to do what I needed to do to get better. I relied on my abilities. And that was an aha moment for me.
In some ways, that's probably a reflection of when you were talking about your kids. Like, man, I don't know if they have the same grit and the same work ethic. If life is naturally easier for you, you tend to not work as hard. It's just it's the relationship that happens. Like, if you struggle like crazy through something, you are a different character than someone that breezed through. You're like, I'm taller than everybody. I'm dunking on everyone. They can't shoot on me. I don't have to train as hard as you. I don't have to run as many sprints as you did. But when you can find that combination, that's the real magic. The people that take pure natural talent and they combine it with work ethic, those are the unstoppable people. Those are the Michael Jordans. Those are the elite.
How often did we see an athlete or know an athlete that we say, boy, if they worked as hard as this person, they got the ability, but they're not working as hard. Whereas this person, if they had that ability as hard as they work, I mean, you see that often.
100%. In this building, constantly. There are kids that sacrifice, like they're the top professional fighter in this building. They train harder than you can imagine because they're not even competing yet as amateurs. They're still teenagers, but they're outworking professional fighters, and you're going, oh my God, if you could take the essence of that, the spirit of that, and you could take that and put that into someone that has such raw natural talent or physical gifts that are just on it. Yeah. They're untouchable. That's how you produce like the elite. But it's such a weird thing because naturally talented people tend to realize they don't have to work as hard. Yeah. And people that don't have like the physical gifts, they want it so bad, but they're not going to have certain aspects.
Yeah, they're hungry.
So it's once in a lifetime that you get the Michael Jordans that are the combination.
Yeah, you think about some of the best athletes in history, and some of them come from pretty dysfunctional backgrounds, right? They come from, tough tough backgrounds that they've had to work and drag and grit and everything to get to where they are, and that's as a result their work ethic, right? They realize, boy, I have a little bit of skill, but also I got to get out of this, and it's one of their motivations. For me, I had a pretty, as we call it, cake-eating life, right? I mean, it was pretty soft in the sense of, boy, I had a meal every day. We get in the gym anytime I wanted.
But you think your siblings were a massive factor into shaping you to be the man
absolutely.
you are?
Yeah, because there's no question that if it wasn't for that internal competition, like I said, it's brushing our teeth, whatever it was, we were going after it. And I'll never forget, I was home from college one time, and my younger brother and I were playing one-on-one Nerf hoop in the bedroom, right? Full court Nerf. We had a Nerf hoop on each end of the bedroom, right? And we were breaking stuff, and my mother was so upset, but it was like, oh, we're just having fun, Mom. We're just having a little competition, a little fun. And again, my parents made a ton of sacrifices for us. They literally were, I don't remember an event that my parents were not at, one or the other, right? And I don't know how they did it. It was 6 of us, right? They were always moving one way or another. And, that was the foundation of always knowing I had somebody up there supporting me, doing what I was doing. That was really important to me.
And it sounds like they absolutely crushed it as parents, because if you look at, you have your older sister in Singapore running her own fitness club. You're absolutely killing it across a multitude of life aspects. You guys are crushing it. So they can look back and go, man, we did it right. You know what I mean? And that's just being able to say that's a massive success. There's a lot of families that look back and say, with hindsight, man, we shouldn't have done A, B, C, and D. You guys are all crushing it.
Well, we have our issues, right? We all do.
Everybody does.
But, one of the things that, and I don't want to go too far ahead, but, working with former professional athletes that I do now in a lot of capacity, if former world-class and high-caliber athletes could apply what they've learned in athletics in the next phase of their life, in the real world, so to speak, stand back. Look out. And that's why I love what I do today. Not to move too far ahead, but after playing college, after playing overseas, I had an opportunity to come back here, and I had a 3-day tryout out in San Francisco, a free agent tryout. There was 8 of us by invite only out there, and the scouts and coaches were there. It was, as I tell people, it was the 3 toughest days of basketball that I've ever had. All I saw was a hotel and a gym for 3 days. And, we're being evaluated, we're being looked at. Well, 2 weeks after that tryout, you have a 30-day window, just to back up a little bit, you have a 30-day window. After the tryout, you have 30 days that somebody signs you, right? And within that 30 days, I went in for knee surgery and found out it was time to get a real job. And, needless to say, I wasn't happy. I knew I was having problems. I knew, I had a bad wheel. I thought, okay, well, let's get in there, get the surgery, get it taken care of. Well, then they're like, nope, you're bone on bone, right? You can keep playing and not walk by the time you're 40, or you can give it up. And so for me as a 25, 26-year-old man, that was a tough decision, but it was the right decision, right? I wanted to walk by the time I was 40 and not have a knee replacement or whatever would have been needed. And so I walked away. I was angry, right? Upset about, boy, how could this end? I had the world by the tail and having all this fun. But it was really, I took a year off. And during that year, I decided partway through it, I thought, I got tired of being angry. I got tired of doing nothing. I said, I need to start being productive again. So I decided to go start pursuing a master's degree, and I got a master's in counseling. And so it was great for me because that set up the foundation. I already had a bachelor's degree. That was one of the things I wanted to make sure I finished my degree in college. So I finished that. And then when I got done playing basketball, I said, after that year, I said, let me start working on a master's. I got a master's in counseling. And so that was the next phase of my life. I literally got into counseling. I became a middle school counselor. And I was a middle school counselor for 25 plus years. And during that time, helping kids, coaching as well, it was a great reward for me to be able to transition from. Nothing ever replaced being an athlete. Nothing replaces that. But at least I found the satisfaction of helping others and building others up. And one of the thoughts that I had during that time frame was, wouldn't it be neat to sit down with other former pro athletes and hear about their life after pro sports, and more importantly, how they recreated their success after pro sports? And that spawned the idea for my book. So I sat down with 20 former Detroit Pistons, Tigers, Red Wings, and Lions and interviewed them about their life after pro sports, and more importantly, how they recreated their success after pro sports. So guys like Dave Bing and Lem Barney and Ted Lindsay, and I can go through the whole list, and Jim Northrup, and all these guys that after they're done playing pro sports, they were Hall of Fame or world champion, they created their own businesses, and they told their stories, and it was exciting for me. And my thought and my motivation, to be honest, James, for writing that book was, if one athlete reads that book and it helps them with their transition out of sports, it was well worth it. Well, needless to say, it turned into so much more. The book became a regional bestseller. My agent and I at the time said, boy, this is bigger than the book. Let's create something else out of this. We created a TV show from Glory Days. And so we've completed 4 seasons. I've done 50 TV interviews of Hall of Fame, all-star athletes about their life after pro sports. And the flow of the show is this. We talk about the glory days, right? You got to talk about the glory days. We talk about the reality of that transition. It's a very real transition, and I'll give you a great example. The exit stats for pro sports, for the mainstream pro sports, I should say, so NFL, NBA, hockey, and Major League Baseball, 25% of NFL players are broke within the first year out.
Within the first year?
First year, 25%. 78 of NFL players are broke within 2 years. NBA, National Basketball Association, 60% are broke within 5 years, and there's up to an 80% divorce rate for transitioning athletes. So that's the reality. That is the reality for these athletes transitioning out of sports.
I would never think those statistics were that high, because in your mind, these are people living the dream. They're making tons of money. They're absolutely crushing it across the board. They got to be making other business investments, right? And they got to be learning something that is a backup,
you would
right?
hope, yeah.
Wow.
But you take a 95% pay cut, right?
Sure.
Especially if it's not planned, right? Especially if all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I had this injury, or all of a sudden I'm not good enough anymore. They got 10 other guys in my position that are better than me.
So you're saying most of these pro athletes, while they're making this huge money, are spending it at the same time they're making it? Because if they're putting it aside, it's got to be years that they can bank on, even if they did nothing.
Right, absolutely. Well, you think about it. I mean, I remember being, 19, 20, 25 years old, thinking, I'm going to play the rest of my life, right? This is going to go on forever. And you don't realize that, I have a very small window of opportunity. I think the average is 3.2 years as a mainstream pro athlete. And so I have a very small window of opportunity to make that kind of money, to be at that level. And as a result, I'm not thinking about the future. And as and advice is only as good as it is heeded. So I could talk all day long to an athlete and say, hey, guess what? It's going to be over at some point. They're not going to care. They're like, I'm just living in a moment. I have to live in a moment. And so the reality is that these athletes come out, and I have people that say 80% divorce rate, and they're like, yeah, they're out cheating on their wives and stuff. And I says, perhaps some of them, but think about this. I don't care how much money you make. If you take a 95% pay cut suddenly, and you go from being on the road 6 months out of the year, all of a sudden you're face-to-face with your spouse every single day with a 95% pay cut, what relationship would survive that?
Well, and you're probably a little depressed. You're probably in that transition phase. Yeah. You're struggling to find a new identity, because all of your identity, your entire life for most of these people has been the athlete.
Yeah.
And now that's stripped from you. What do you think are the common denominators in the things for the people that you saw that did turn it around and make it?
It's funny you asked that, because I've made a living on it since. So from the aspect of writing my book and interviewing these athletes and having a counseling background, I started analyzing, what did these athletes that found success do? What was it that it was their commonality of success? And what I discovered, James, is that there was 5 things that these athletes that found success again did. And being the simple mind that I am, I said, well, let me create an acronym, right? Because I want to remember these 5 things. So
Smart.
I created an acronym called R.U.L.E.S, R-U.L.E.S, and each letter stands for something. Each letter means something. And so what I started off doing was talking to former athletes about these rules, right? I'm going to tell you about them in a moment. But I started talking to former athletes, and it's like, wow, this applies to these athletes with their transition. It helps. Well, then I started getting requests from businesses that were going through transition and change, because a lot of these commonalities could apply to a business, an organization, anybody going through transition. And so that's how I spawned my speaking career. Then I started speaking to businesses about going through transition, change, anything from the world's largest packaging company to marketing companies to insurance, doctors, attorneys. And so it's been a great ride in a sense of applying what I've learned from working with former athletes into these businesses that are going through change. And so the rules are this. It's pretty simple, actually. The first letter, R, stands for refocus. What I've discovered is that athletes and anybody going through a change had to refocus. And the best way to refocus is to evaluate your current goals and establish new goals. And by doing so, it recreates that new passion and purpose in your life, which is really important for athletes, right? A great example of that is if you look at non-athletes, right? I always talk about adversity, and one of the biggest, I'm a history buff, I don't know about you, I love history, I love sports. Well, as I was researching about the Prohibition that happened in America, one of the things I discovered is that during Prohibition, when Prohibition hit America, there was 1,273 breweries in America. So imagine those 1,273 companies that all of a sudden were told, guess what? You can no longer brew or sell your beer legally. Talk about adversity. Talk about change.
Sounds like COVID in this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, you can't open your doors.
Well, a lot of parallels. And what I discovered is that through the prohibition, only 244 remained open. And so we know what we know what happened to the 80% that closed. But so what did those 20% do? And so I started doing further research, and I started looking at one of the companies that they made a refocus. Instead of brewing beer, they said, well, let's start making ginger ale. Let's make malt extract. They were even making car and refrigerator parts to survive. And as a result, Anheuser-Busch survived that, has become the world's biggest brewery as a result, because they refocused. Yeah, they refocused as a result. And same thing with athletes, right? Athletes that have a refocus, and that refocus can start before or after their playing careers. And by starting that refocus, it helps with their passion and purpose again.
It makes perfect sense to me hearing you say that, because honestly, like, I am a person that is pulled into the future by my visions, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I create a vision in my mind, or I desire something really bad. And I feel like athletes do that too. They know what they're working for. When you get up out of bed in the morning, you're willing to do what you're willing to do because of that vision. So when you transition out and you lose that vision of where am I going?
Right.
If you don't find that again, how are you getting out of bed in the morning?
You wander.
Yeah. You feel lost. You feel depressed. You feel like, man, like you said, my glory days are over and they're behind me. But if you can refocus and recreate that vision, that when you wake up in the morning, you go, you know what? It might be a new chapter, but it's still my story and it can be awesome. That makes perfect sense.
How easy was it for you to create goals when you were a fighter, right? When you were at your peak, creating goals, workout goals. I mean, I had it up on my bedroom wall that every time I left my bedroom, it was right there. I was doing, here's my goal, short term, long term. It was easy. And so recreating that afterwards is where it's difficult, right? I talk to a lot of athletes. It's like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know, right?
I also feel like it's extremely easy when you're up, when you're killing it, when you're crushing it. It's easy to set goals. When the whole world's telling you you're awesome and you're winning, it is so effortless to just be like, you know what, I'm going to conquer this and this and this. But what's really challenging is when you're down, when you're depressed, when
absolutely.
When you face extreme tragedy. If you can refocus in those moments, you'll conquer anything.
Yeah.
But it is very difficult.
Yeah.
100%.
But what the exciting part about a refocus is to recreate that passion and purpose. And face it, we're wired that way, right? As athletes, we're absolutely wired that way. We have to have passion in our life, because without passion, it's like it's not the way we're wired. It's not, it's hard to get up every day, like you said, if we don't have passion in our life. And so that refocus is so important. And again, I'm going to give you the crib note version. This is like I've done this in 90 minutes where I presented to people.
You've only dropped one letter, and I'm loving it. And I go, that's stellar. I mean, it's spectacular information. And the amount of insight that's actually in that small bit of information you've dropped is endless. Like, you can go down a rabbit hole with how important it is to refocus your life.
Yes.
Refocus relationships, refocus friendships.
Absolutely.
You have to do these things.
Yeah. No, I have a presentation with a large real estate company in a couple of weeks, and I'm spending the whole hour on just this first part, just on the refocus, setting goals, priorities, and things of that sort. But
I would take that seminar. I mean, it's such a good conversation to have.
That alone, yeah. So the next letter is U, R-U, which stands for using network. What I've discovered is that high caliber athletes, organizations, whoever is going through a change, use their network. And what I mean by that is athletes especially have a huge, huge network of people around them that you develop. The higher level you go, the bigger that network is. As an example, I got a friend of mine, he was a hockey player for quite a few years, and he started talking about how he's going to be a financial advisor, right? He knew that he wanted to get in the financial advising world when he was done playing professional hockey. Played with the Rangers, played with the Red Wings. And he said, boy, I started tapping into my Rolodex, so to speak, my phone contacts, and letting them know, hey, guess what? I'm no longer a pro hockey player. I'm a financial advisor. He said it skyrocketed his business because he tapped into that network. And so the first step is to have that refocus so you know where you're going, where you want to be. The next step is using that network, tapping that network. Now, I always have to qualify, though, when I talk about this one, I'm not talking about using and abusing people, right? I'm not talking about, boy, I'm just going to use this person to get what I want to accomplish. It's creating that win-win. So in other words, boy, James, you want to accomplish this, and I think I can help you with that. And let's create a win-win between us so I can help you accomplish that, or vice versa. And so, using that network is so important. No, I mean, back to the Anheuser-Busch illustration, they had a vast distribution network, right, that they used when they were brewing beer. Well, they tapped into that network to say, hey, we're not brewing beer, but I got ginger ale, I got malt extract. Boy, can we do something with these car parts or something we're building as well? And they tapped into that network to continue that flow of distribution for them, which helped save them as a result.
I feel like that's why character is so incredibly vital in life, because
Oh,
you can have a
good
network.
point.
You can be in the spotlight. You can be the big guy, but if while you're at the top, if you're a piece of shit, if you're
That's a
if you're
great
a
point.
terrible person, when you
Yeah.
go to call on that network later on, they're going to go, get out of
Yeah,
here.
you're the doofus,
I'm
right?
so glad you're out of professional sports now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why when you live your life with character and integrity and values, you know what? When you are transitioning and you've been in the spotlight for all these people, they know who you are, but they also respect you. They honor you. They want to be a part of that
Yeah.
assistance. Now, all of a sudden, when you're calling up those people, they go, absolutely, man. What do you think about we do this together?
Yeah.
We work on that. It's huge.
That's a great point. That is an excellent point, because that, we don't talk about character a whole lot with the rules, but that's very important for that network, because if you are an a-hole, right, people aren't going to want to be around you. It's like, hey, great, you're a Hall of Famer. Congratulations.
Yeah,
See
you
bud.
know 100,000 people, and 1,000 would help you out, and the other ones want to see you fail because
Yeah.
you've been a bad person. 100%.
No, that's a great point. So the next letter is L, R-U-L, which, bar none, without question, no doubt, is the most difficult for high caliber athletes. Letting go. Letting go. Because it's in the marrow of our bones to never let go, to never give up, right? We fall down 8, we give up 9, we get up 9, right? And so it's very difficult, because knowing when to let go is very challenging. And at some point, in order to make that transition, you have to let go. I'll give you a great example. I had a phone call years ago from a guy out of Houston. He called me up. He says, hey, I heard you're the guy that works with athletes in transition. I said, well, tell me more. He says, well, I just got back from Beijing. I won a medal in the Olympics. I said, okay, you got my attention, right? He says, I'm thinking about transitioning out of sports, and I'm not sure. I said, okay. So I started walking him through this rules process. I said, well, if and when you're ready, we're going to start walking through these rules. We're going to have a refocus. We're going to talk more detail about your goals, and we're going to start looking at your network. And we got to the letting go process, and he said, I don't know if I can let go. I said, well, what do you mean? He says, I'm not sure if I want to commit another 4 years, or I don't want to commit another 4 years. And so it took us about 6 months of conversation, very regular conversation, before he got to the point of saying, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to commit another 4 years. I'm going to let go and I'm going to move on, okay? And in contrast to that, I had a phone call from an agent here in town, and he says, hey, I got a baseball player. He just got released from the Tigers from spring training. He's a pitcher. And would you mind sitting down with him? I says, no, not at all. So I sat down with him the week after he got released. He and I started walking through this rules. And within a week, I call him up and see how he's going. He's like, oh, I'm good. I'm done. He totally let go of the fact that he was a professional athlete and started moving on, having great success. And both guys are having great success at this point that I give you an example of. But as a result, one did a little bit quicker than others. And I talk to guys, I have one guy in particular I talk to, I swear 15 years later, he still hasn't let go, right? He's still, the glory days are still there for him, and he still hasn't truly let go of the fact that, hey, I'm no longer a high caliber athlete, and I need to create my success somewhere else. And so letting go is so important for people.
How did you get that closure? So after that tryout and everything, I'm sure you're going through that period. What finally made you turn that page?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's a journey, right? It took me probably 5 years, literally 5 years, for one, to realize that I wasn't in fierce competition with every soul around me, right? There is competition, but even like in sports, you're competing with your own teammates, you're competing with everybody around you. And to that level, I realized, boy, I'm not in fierce competition with everybody, because that's not healthy, right? There's competition, but to be in competition with my spouse or my girlfriend, or, that's not healthy all the time, right? And it took me about 5 years to realize that. So I had to let go of that first, and that took about 5 years. For me, I think it was a process. It wasn't just an overnight aha where I woke up and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I let go. It was a process. Part of it was being able to help others for quite a few years as a counselor. That really helped me, part of that letting go and help with that image. The other part was really writing that book. I think it really was my final step of letting go and realizing, wow, this is really important that I do this, because to help these other athletes, I have to do it. And then it turned into, when I did let go, it's amazing what's happened since, because I've been able to focus so much more on other things and not even worry about the fact. I laugh at people when they introduce me as, oh, he's a former professional. I laugh. I literally laugh. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but that was a whole different part of my life, right? Like I said, I joke about pounds now. I don't go by years. I go by pounds. But letting go is really important. I'll give another great example. One of the guys that I've interviewed for the book and on the TV show, his name's Lem Barney. He was a Hall of Famer for the Detroit Lions. One of the fastest guys. I remember talking to Lem, and he talked about being down, and he grew up down south, and he talked about, being one of the fastest guys in high school. Like he was like the fastest in the whole state. Well, then he got to college and he realized there was 40 other guys that are running just as fast as he is, if not faster. Well, then he got the NFL and he realized everybody's fast, right? But he talked about when he got done playing football, he played for 11 years. And when he got done, he said it took him 18 years, literally 18 years to stop having dreams about football. He said often he was punching and kicking his wife at night, right? And I thinking he's knocking down a pass or tackling somebody. He was a defensive back. But he said literally it took him that long to let it go, right? That he was having these dreams, intense dreams about it. I mean, I don't know how many nightstands you've knocked over at night. I have, right? Thinking I'm blocking a shot, or I couldn't imagine you. I mean, have you ever had that happen where you're not?
Absolutely. Okay, in the middle of the night, I'll jolt awake, and,
right.
In my mind, I was just blocking a takedown
right,
or
exactly.
something.
Yeah. So you get it, and is that still happening, or has that been let go?
No, it's been let go. And the weird thing is, I was supposed to fight in April of this year. Like I'm still competing,
Wow.
but just for enjoyment, like with no expectation. Like back in the day, it was like, I'm going to be the best in the world. Right. I'm going to be this. I can be the best 35er on earth. But now it's just like, I'm going to do that for fun. But that's just a part of my story. It's no longer like in the beginning, I defined myself.
That was
by
the story.
That was me.
Yeah.
It was James Gray, the jiu-jitsu competitor and mixed martial arts professional, right? But it's just a part of the story now. Now it's just like, I like that aspect, but it's the same way that I might, if we went out back and shot hoops together, it's something that I would just choose to do out of enjoyment, but it's not what defines me anymore. There's so many different aspects.
So let me ask you a question. When did that shift happen? Because I think that's one of the seminal moments for an athlete is realizing this is just what I do. It's not who I am.
For me, it was through coaching. I started coaching, which is funny because for you, it was through counseling. And for me, when I started coaching other people and helping so many other people achieve their goals and their dreams and their lives are changing and they're looking at me as coach now. Yeah. So I started to get redefined because people start looking at me and go, man, coach, like they're hugging me when they're winning their professional debuts, or like I got a girl from a starting amateur to be the only female ever in Michigan's history to get to the UFC. And like when she won her first fight in the UFC and everything, and to her, I am Coach James, you know what I mean? And many other people, it's almost like it gave me a new perspective
identity.
To see myself. So then there was James the fighter, there was James the coach, and then there's James the businessman, and now it's James the podcaster and James and so you know what it does? It takes a little bit of the pressure off. I think it adds a confidence to the fact that I'm way bigger than just being a competitor.
Yeah.
I'm this and this and this. So for me, it was through coaching, but it was through helping other people, which is the same as your story.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when you realize it's bigger than you, right? And so letting go is so important. And again, I'm a history buff. If you look at the Roman Empire, right, and the Roman generals, when they would come home from their conquering lands, they'd come home and they'd have these big parades, or like Super Bowl parades at that time in Rome. They called them campaigns. If you look in history, they're called campaigns. And so these generals would come home from conquering a land, and they'd have these big campaigns and parades, and it was such a big deal. I mean, even their kids were all dressed in white and on the chariot as well, and their families. But it's in history, you can read this, that as the general's going through getting all those accolades, they have, typically it was a slave actually, in the chariot with the general, chirping in their ear, saying, all glory is fleeting. All glory is fleeting. In other words, so what? What's next, right? Let go. You got to keep moving on. And so it's such an important lesson in history as well as for each of us athletically, right? That even in life, right, as a businessman, a businesswoman, whatever it is, that, okay, great, and getting to the top of the mountain is easier than staying on top, 100%, right? It's that way in athletics. It's that way in anything. Getting to the top is easier than staying on top. And so how do you continue to stay on top? Well, that's by letting go, right?
And there's a certain level of when you start to just be happy with your credentials or who you are or things like that, and you stop pursuing new goals, in a weird way, your life starts to change course. Like when you're climbing, when you see something that you're striving for, that gives meaning to life. That gives happiness. That gives purpose,
that
right?
refocus.
As soon as you start recognizing that, like, okay, I'm here, and you're on the mountaintop, now you're someone that craves the climb.
Yeah.
And if you take the climb away from yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't refocus a new climb.
It's a refocus, yeah.
Now all of a sudden, I feel like that's where a lot of things can catch up to you. That's where a lot of depression can set in. Because for me, it was always, if I set a certain goal, I want to win this tournament. As soon as I won it, I would instantly just make a new goal.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
I'm going to become a professional fighter. And then it was, okay, I got to do it. Any time in my life that I found myself starting to get stagnant, complacent, any of those things, I have to make a new mountain. It's probably how most athletes are built.
You bring up a great point that I think the best time to set a new goal is right after you accomplish a goal, right afterwards, right? In other words, okay, if you need a day or whatever, or a week, whatever, but the best time to set a new goal is right after you accomplish another goal, because otherwise it is easy to get stagnant or dormant or whatever might happen as a result, or rest on those accolades, which is the next letter, E. And R-U-L-E, the E stands for execute. And what that means is that what I've discovered is anybody in transition or change, it's not a one and done. It's not typically I refocus, I use my network, I let go, and boom, I'm there, right? It's a constant execution. A great example of that is one of the guys I interviewed. He was a high school All-American out of Washington, D.C., one of the best players in the United States as a basketball player. He went on to be an All-American in college at Syracuse University for basketball. He went on to become a #1 draft pick by the Pistons, Detroit Pistons. He went on to become a NBA Hall of Famer, considered one of the best NBA players in history. He then went on to become a business owner of a $500 million a year business. He then went on to become the mayor of Detroit. And Dave Bing continued to execute over and over and over again. He could have easily rested on his laurels. I'm a college All-American. I'm an NBA Hall of Famer. Hey, I built a business.
I was going to say, you could have stopped after any part of that, and I would have been like, that guy crushed it.
Right. And even to this day, now he's helping inner city kids with mentoring, and he continues to execute over and over again. And it's that way in transition, is that you continue to execute. It's not a one and done. Rarely do you one and done and you're there, right? Rarely in life, as an athlete or anybody. And so executing is so important as a result of that. And so that's what the E stands for. The S, to wrap it up, stands for someone. What I've discovered is that high caliber athletes or even businesses have someone, a mentor, so to speak, that helps them with that transition. An example of that is a good friend of mine. He played in the NBA for 8 years. Partway through his career, he just was enamored with TV. He just really liked something about TV. He just enjoyed it. And he had a friend here locally in Detroit that he said, hey, when I'm in town, can I just come in, hang out in the studio? I just want to watch what you're doing, right? So Charlie Neal said, yeah, come on in, just hang out. You can sit in the back of the room or whatever, just watch what I do as a broadcaster. And so he did that for quite a few years, and he learned. He had a mentor that helped him understand, and as a result, Greg Kelser is now in his 30-some-odd year of TV broadcasting for the NBA. And, we could talk about industries. Industries have done that as well, had mentors come in and people help them. And so it's so important to find somebody who could help you. Typically, it's more than just a network, right? It's one person that can help you with that.
That makes sense. And I mean, this conversation is massively important for people that are at the top. When you're a professional athlete or you're killing it, this stage is coming.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I feel like by preemptively preparing for it and talking about it in advance, even just knowing that it's there, knowing that that's going to take place is really important, because otherwise you kind of get blindsided.
Well, it's huge. And one of the guys that I interviewed, Dan Petrie is his name, he won a World Series with the Detroit Tigers. They had a famous coach by the name of Sparky Anderson. Sparky's well known around Detroit here and actually throughout the whole nation. And Sparky, they said, often would remind those baseball players. I mean, they won World Series, right? But they said, Sparky would always say as a coach, hey, just understand it's going to be over at some point. This will be over, right? He reminded them often about that. Hey, we're going to do the best we can. We're going to play the best we can, but it's going to be over at some point. And he said it was always in the back of their mind, not that they really prepared for it, but at least when it did happen, it's like, oh yeah, that's what Coach was talking about, right? And Dan Petrie talked about being 35 years of age, coming out of pro baseball, and all he knew was baseball. I mean, he didn't go to college, he went right to pros. He said at 35 years of age, I had to learn how to write a resume. He said, I had no idea, but I knew it was coming because Coach always said it was going to happen, and here I am. And so, having a mentor or somebody of that sort, so R-U-L-E-S, that's the rules, that's the acronym. We could spend, another 90 minutes talking more in detail, more stories. One of the things that I always want to talk about is, I've done 50 TV interviews, James, and probably one of the most impacting, because always people ask me this, well, which one did you like the most? I mean, they're all interesting. I mean, I've interviewed R.U.L.E.S, who I was really amazed by, because Ray being with the Baltimore Ravens and 2 Super Bowls and MVP of the NFL, I thought this guy would walk in with a lot of swagger, right? He'd walk in just, I'm Billy Badbutt, right? And, he walked in, and he was probably one of the most humble interviews I've done, and let me tell you why. Towards the end of the interview, I'm asking R.U.L.E.S, I said, Ray, you've had a lot of accolades in your life, 2 Super Bowl championships, MVP of the NFL, all these Pro Bowls. And I said, which one of these meant the most to you? And he looked at me and he said, he says, those were all great, but he said, seeing the look on my mother's face when they unveiled a statue out in front of Baltimore Stadium, he said, that was the biggest award I've ever had. And I'm like, wow, good answer, right? And just kind of shows how humble he was and appreciative of what he had in his life. But there's another guy that really, his story was so impactful that we've had him on the show twice, 2 different seasons. His name is Doug Smith. Doug Smith is from Ottawa, Canada, and he was a number 2 draft pick in the NHL, right? Not the number 1 pick, but he was the number 2 pick in the whole NHL. He went to the LA Kings, and he talked about being 19 years old, being in LA, going from Ottawa, Canada to LA. He says, I was 19 years old, money in my pocket, driving a Porsche, condo on the beach, right? He says it was a free fall, literally like a free fall. Well, at 28 years of age, Doug went headfirst into the boards during a professional hockey game and went from being a professional athlete to a quadriplegic. Snapped his neck, just like that. And so needless to say, Doug became extremely despondent. I mean, his life changed instantly. He had shattered, I think it was like 250 some odd shattering of his vertebrae. Paralyzed, had nothing from the neck on down, nothing from the neck on down. Was still alive, but he talked about being so despondent. He says, I couldn't even kill myself. I had no key, I couldn't even do that. Well, his wife recognized how despondent he was. And she said to him, you know what? He said, she said to him, I can't imagine what you're experiencing, honey, and after all this, and, we've lost this house and lost this property as a result. And anyway, she goes, but I still love you. You have 2 beautiful daughters that love you. And Doug Smith said that was the seminal moment that shifted his attitude, right? Because attitude determines our altitude. And he said that shifted his attitude, and he said from that moment on, him and his wife started doing more research about his injury and started looking at it, and they realized that his his spinal cord was still intact. It wasn't severed. The paralysis came from the shattering of the vertebrae, from the trauma of the vertebrae. So he said, oh, that's good news. So he and his wife started doing further research, and over the course of 14 years, between the research and between the therapies and the different things that they tried, he's now walking again. So his spinal cord was still intact, and he's got some brace, he's got a little wobbling, but he's a motivational speaker and best-selling author in Canada now. But one of his best sound bites, after talking about all this, he said, as an athlete, as a world-class athlete, my goal was to be the best in the world, right? He said, I was striving to be the best in the world. He said, after my accident, he said, my attitude changed. And he says, I realized that no longer did I want to be the best in the world, but I wanted to be the best for the world.
That is so powerful.
So needless to say, we've had him on twice on the show. It's an amazing story.
And I bet you that man is making an incredible impact around the world. Because while you were telling me that story, I'm thinking to myself, that man has experienced such an incredible high and yet such an incredible low. He has a perspective on life that less than 0.1% of the population would ever understand.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because he's felt the lowest of the lows and the highest of the highs.
Yeah.
And now here he is serving other people to find his happiness.
Yeah. Yeah, and he went through that journey and realized, boy, I can help others now. And he travels and speaks on he's really got he talks about acute trauma, which is what he experienced with his neck. He also talks about accumulative trauma, which really is something that he says is probably more dangerous than acute trauma, because accumulative trauma happens over a period of time. And he talked about being a pro hockey player. He says that's kind of like accumulative trauma, right? Over the years that you're playing, there's a lot of accumulation of that trauma that occurs, whether it be psychological or physical or whatever it is. And so
probably every professional sport.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
absolutely.
just trauma because you're working your body so hard.
Yeah, body and spirit, right?
Yeah, 100%. Man, there's actually a lot of parallels as you're speaking. I mean, you've made the reference to the companies, but I've had so many people talking about the military making transition. Yes. There are so many parallels that your rules system should be preemptively taught to soldiers coming back. I mean, we had like an epidemic in this country before the current one of soldiers taking their own lives and not being able to get back. These rules and teaching someone that like this is going to be rough. You are going to lose identity and camaraderie and brotherhood and the things that make your life complete right now, and structure, which human beings, most of them, thrive on structure.
Absolutely.
When that's stripped from you, if you don't have a set of rules that you know that you can follow, or at least someone that can guide you through the process, the outcome is statistically going to be way more likely to be,
in a bad
terrible.
Direction. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying.
Absolutely.
It's sad to talk about how many people take their lives, but I mean, it's like we need to be having these conversations.
It's funny you mention that, because I've been speaking more and more to military. I got asked to come out to Denver this past year and speak to their transition assistant advisors. There's 50 of them throughout the country.
Yeah, one was just in here. The one from Michigan was just on
the Ronnie. And so Ronnie introduced me to this group out in Denver, and it's all of them together. And I went through my rules with them, and they were able to apply it to veterans that they work with. And
Absolutely.
A lot of parallels, like you said. Yeah.
100%. I mean, anybody really that is about to go through a difficult transition should consider looking at your book, should consider listening to you speak, and should consider bringing you in for a seminar, because these are the things that, I mean, it's not revolutionary material, but it's made into a simple process. I love how you said in the beginning, you said, I'm going to make an acronym so I can keep it focused, and it makes it easier. If you start to get stressed out, you have your rules to follow. And it happens to be an acronym that perfectly fits. It's the rules to get through the transition.
Rules of life, there's rules in the game. I mean, rules apply to a lot of things.
And just from our conversation right now, I had never once used the metaphor before about the fact that, like, with my life, and I'm sure a lot of athletes, like, you have a mountain and you live on climbing the mountain. Mm-hmm. And you know what? When you get to the top, you have to get a new mountain. Yeah. It's almost like your life has to be one giant mountain, and you're not going up and down. You're just trying to get to one level so that you can chase another. So you can chase
plateau.
Yes, exactly. Because as soon as I stop climbing, or probably you or anyone else, that's where depression can set in. That's where you lose purpose and vision.
Oh, I agree.
You know, like, so even just this conversation, I hope that a lot of athletes, you know, hear this and go, man, you know what? When that time comes, I need to know that it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the end of the world. No. I can write a new chapter, because you would say now you're as fulfilled now as you were as an athlete, or more.
Well, we haven't even talked about everything I'm doing now, right? I mean, it's just, I'm very, very blessed. I'm very grateful because I've been able to apply what I've learned from sports. And part of it is not just what I've applied, but the team. Right, it's building a team of people, because, face it, you and I could not have the level of success we have without having a team of people around us, and that's what I've learned. So, I'm executive producer of about 6 major TV and film projects right now, and it's all because of the team, right? We have a team of people around us that their gifts are filling in with what is the need, right? I have editors, I have technical directors. I mean, I'm the creative guy. I like coming up with the ideas and connecting the dots. That's what I do as an executive producer. But I also co-founded an organization called Purpose Point. And Purpose Point is a professional development company. We have keynote speakers, we have coaches, we have training, and we have an engaged technical platform as well. And so we're helping people and organizations as a result with our Purpose Point, because one of the things that we found is that, especially companies, right? You start off with a purpose. You might start with a purpose in your life. And as a company, you start with a purpose. And as you start to scale, you have to add people, right? So you have the purpose and you start adding people. And then as you add people, you have to start adding processes. And so you start adding these processes. Well, as you add from the purpose to the people to the process, now you have to start thinking, boy, I really got to focus on the profits, because if we're not profitable, we're not going to be able to keep it going. And a lot of companies have lost sight of their original purpose. And so one of our purposes with Purpose Point is to help companies and individuals reconnect with that purpose and live that purpose.
That core value, those passions that launched the company initially.
Yeah, and how many people do you and I know that they've left their job, maybe making very good money, for something different because they felt they had more purpose with it as a result?
Especially nowadays, the next generation, they're all about purpose. Yeah. If they are not motivated to stay with a company because they feel a part of something bigger, they're only doing it long enough to get a paycheck till they find the next thing.
Absolutely.
If you don't create purpose for your employees, you are going to have a hard time keeping people around.
Yeah, this next workforce, exactly.
They want to be a part of something. Mm-hmm. And you know what? You should. At the end of the day, you should not just be going to work to be in a mouse wheel to get your check to go back to work.
Yeah, those days are over.
Yeah, you should try to find purpose, or you should try to be part of a community or a network or a vision or a team or a dream of something that elevates you in life. You know what I mean? Where you go, you know what? I am a part of something. Yeah. And through my hard work, we are creating a legacy. We're leaving something behind. And if companies don't get on board with figuring out how to reach their people like that, it's going to be a constant turnover rate. It's going to be a constant turnover.
Absolutely. So I'm very fulfilled now. I mean, in between the executive producing the shows, the Purpose Point,
you had your book that was ultra successful.
Yeah, I mean that's a platform, right? To me, the book is just a platform to do something bigger.
So now, a man like yourself, what are your goals? Because you're crushing it. You have successfully transitioned. You are helping other people make the transition. You are in a ton of different business ventures. What are your goals? What does it look like a year down the road, 5 years down the road? What is Kurt trying to create?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is, we won an Emmy award for season 4 with From Glory Days, interviewing athletes, and that was with Rocky Bleier interview, 4-time Super Bowl champ, war veteran. It was a great interview. And one of my goals now is to help others get to that level. Right, as an executive producer, one of my jobs is to help other shows and other things get to the highest level and improve. I once heard somebody say, wealth always finds excellence, right? And so one of my goals is to help create excellence around me and helping others become excellent. And so that's one of my goals, is helping others, either through Purpose Point or through what I do as an executive producer, through my company, Glory Days Productions. And so that's my focus and that's my goal. Now, on top of that, I mentioned about my wife and kids, right? So I want to find the balance of raising the best family and being the best dad that I can while still doing these other things, because it's important for me to feel my purpose. And, the number one job on this earth for me is to be a good family man, right? That's the number one job. And then to create a living so that I can help support that as a result.
I feel like balance is something that entrepreneurs or competitive people struggle with.
Yeah, huge.
Because you tend to be extremists, you know what I mean? And I find it in myself. It's like I want to go so head into things, you know what I mean? That balance is difficult.
Yeah.
I'm an extremist. I'm someone that if I'm going to do something, I want to do it to the absolute best of my capabilities. But what happens with that is you tend to get tunnel vision and you go so deep down the rabbit hole that you take a step back and you go, oh, Jesus, I'm slacking in these areas because I've been so. How do you maintain balance? Is it a big part the woman that you're with? Is it your family? How do you keep that balance in your life? Because I know a lot of passionate people.
Yeah, for me it's perspective, and I can't speak for anybody else, but for me it's my faith, right? I have a deep faith. I was raised with a faith in God and understanding that there's a bigger picture than just what we live here. And so for me it was 100% that was my foundation, and understanding that my time on this earth is very limited. We talk about 100% of professional athletes are done at some point. Well, 100% of people are going to be done at some point. Undeniable fact, right? There's only one guy that we know in history by the name of Jesus that overcame that. And so, I know at some point this body is going to expire, right? 100%. And I'm very comfortable with that because I know what the final score is afterwards, and I have that confidence, right, because of my faith. And so I think that's my foundation, is understanding that that's my rock, so to speak, that, that allows me to realize, okay, now I can focus on the other things in life. I know where my eternity is going to be based on my faith. And so that's why I guess I'm able to go out and help others and pour into others' lives, right, because of that.
That's huge. And keeping proper perspective can help so much in life. When you take a step back and you look at your whole legacy and you look at the big picture, you can realize, like, you know what? This is something I love very dearly, and I need to make sure I'm giving my 100% there too. You know what I mean? Because we get overextended. I'm sure you've been overextended many times in your life.
It's funny you mention that, because I didn't bring it up earlier, but I see that often, that especially the higher the caliber of the athlete, the more imbalanced it is typically, right? And myself, I'll be the first to admit, I was very unbalanced, right? It was all basketball, and I'm the only. I heard a guy out of Britain, he won a gold medal in rowing, and he talked about how he was competing in the world championships in rowing. And at the same time, Princess Diana was killed in a car crash, and they actually were going to cancel their competition, world class, the world competition. And he's like, "What do you mean? I've been training my whole life for this, right?" And then he realized that, oh my goodness, there's a bigger picture than just my life, right? There's a bigger picture than just me rowing for a gold medal, right? And I think that was, hearing him talk about his aha moment, and each of us can have our own aha moment based on our own experiences, right? My aha moment may not be the same for you or for anybody else, and that's okay. It's just a matter of understanding what that is. But, I think the biggest thing is how do we compete at the highest level and still remain balanced? I think that's the biggest challenge. It really is. And I think for me, one of the secrets is understanding there's a separation between who I am and what I do.
1,000%.
Because if I have that separation, I'm able to have more of a balance. If what I do is who I am, oh boy, when I'm a CEO of a company or I'm a boxer or whatever, when that is over, which it will be at some point, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, who am I? What am I? Right?
And the ego tends to run rampant in high-level sports. I mean, you need an ego. It's a healthy ego.
You have to have a confidence. You have to.
It drives you towards things. Yeah. So if you end up with the extreme imbalance where all you care about, the rest of the world doesn't exist. The earth actually revolves around you and achieving the highest level of success that you can find. Your ego is just demanding that success. But with that, you tend to close, like you said, Princess Diana's killed, and he's like, oh, I don't care. I better be out there rowing.
Right. I've been training for 4 years for this, right?
Exactly. And it's hard because you see it. You've trained athletes, and I've been around athletes my whole life. They need that just absolutely relentless competitive spirit and that fire, which is good. But then if you don't separate, this is what I do, this is who I am, your character can slip. The way, when you just said that, it instantly triggered in my brain. You know what? Because you have to look at yourself as the human being that you are, and then what you do. If you don't make that separation, the boxer that wants to destroy everything in front of him may make decisions that would make, the version of the human being extremely disappointed.
Yes.
Very sad.
Yeah.
And that probably leads to depression. You look back and the things that you did while you were at the top, where you hurt people, you damage relationships, now all of a sudden you're going to have to work through all that trauma during a transition period, which is going to be tougher because you're going to lose that identity of yourself. But if you can keep in touch with the human aspects of yourself and say, you know what, this is me as a human being. Right. On the court, I'm going to be as competitive as possible. I'm going to try to crush
that line, yeah.
Yep, I'm going to flip that switch.
That's tough to do, but it's exactly because that's why I think there's so many problems in the NFL, right? Because they don't differentiate. You hear about the spousal abuse and all the problems that are going on because they don't understand switching it on and off.
They probably feel untouchable. They have to be this competitive natured, I'm the best, I do whatever I want, I'm successful. And if you don't make that distinction that no, that's me when I'm on the field.
Right.
When you stand across from me, I need to do everything in my power to beat you and be successful and mentally torment you. Anything I can to be successful. When I'm not there, I got to be a family man. I got to treat my woman with respect. I got to treat my kids the best as possible. I got to set a good example. Otherwise, back to the original theme of the network, if the people down the road look back at you and said, man, you're a terrible human being, we didn't want to be around you at all.
Forget it.
100%.
Well, to draw a parallel, imagine if you had a fighter that was the fiercest. They get in the ring and they're the
Mike
fiercest,
Tyson.
Right? Well, hang on, I don't know if this is a good parallel using that name, but if they're the fiercest in the ring, but as soon as they come outside the ring and things settle down, they're hugging their wife, they're shaking hands. Hey, so glad you came. Thank you so much. I appreciate my sponsors.
I went with I thought you were going to say the fiercest, but they never turned it off.
Let it go,
and they were just a psychopath outside.
Yeah.
That's why I said Mike Tyson.
Right.
What you're describing is the perfect example. You need someone that can walk in there and be the absolute destroyer of worlds.
Absolutely.
They can get out of the ring and give you a hug and be like, man, great fight camp.
Yeah, thank you.
Where we go? Mike Tyson was the opposite. That was a man that could never switch it off.
Yeah. Well, I use him as an example about bankruptcy. $300 million, right? You talk about the bankruptcy rate of pro athletes. That's more than some countries' gross domestic product, right?
$250 million. More than $250 million.
$300 million gone. And like I tell people, he had people robbing him blind, no question about it. But, he made some decisions too. Do you really need white tigers, right? And so it's a combination of both. But yeah, I think it's a gift. And I had a hard time with that, shutting it off of, boy, I'm this bag of chips and then some, right? Understanding that I can be the biggest, a-hole on the court in a basketball court or in the ring that I can be with the idea that I'm going to win. But as soon as I leave, detaching from that, right? That's a talent. If you can do that, you're going to rule the world, in my opinion.
And I'm sure that the people that you keep in your life are a huge factor. If you're around people that, when you step out of the ring, praise you for continuing to be that person or allow you to be an asshole, when you go out to eat and you demand, you run the world, it's going to be infectious. It's going to stay there. But if you're around good people that
keep you grounded,
100%, man, the people that you keep around you are probably a crucial aspect. Remember those people that were there in the beginning, before all the success.
It's funny because one of the pro hockey players always said, boy, why is it when I'm playing pro sports, everybody wants to give me free stuff, free meals, free cars, free suits, but as soon as I'm done playing and not making all this money, I have to pay for everything. It's like, figure that one out.
That's life. Yeah, 100%, man. It's just, you said it best in such a beautiful way. It's just, this is what I do. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And both of them should matter to you.
Absolutely.
For as bad as you want to be the best competitor out there, because that obviously matters to all the competitors. That's what they care about. You need to also look at who are you as a human being. If your son or daughter looked at you as a human being, would they classify you good or bad? And that should matter.
Yeah, well, that's huge. Yeah, and some days I'd hate to hear, really, to be honest. I know for a fact I'm not always my best, right? I need to strive to be my best.
What in your routine keeps you because the couple interaction we've had, you're always on your A game, you bring phenomenal energy, you radiate good energy, which a lot of people have always told me about that. They're like, hey, no matter what's going on in your life or anything, you always just have the energy.
Yeah.
What parts of your routine do you think are essential to you keeping that?
Yeah, I think there's no question filling that cup every day. I have to fill that cup because otherwise, it's going to get empty, right? And I want it to be overfilled. And for me, my routine is, I wake up, I do a Bible devotion, I read, I pray. And for me, that's the filling of my cup. That's what I do. Everybody, I can't, tell that for everybody, but I think that's what fills me up and that's what helps keep things in perspective. I spend half my day on the floor playing with a 3-year-old boy, right? That's talk about perspective is we're playing cars and trains and I'm literally on the floor with them just kind of crawling around and playing. And so that keeps things in perspective very much so. The other thing is that, when the first TV show that I hosted came on TV, and we were sitting on the couch with my family to watch it, had some popcorn, and I'm thinking, okay, there's Dad's big debut, right? He's going to be on TV here. I had the wife and the kids, and they're all sitting there. Years ago, we only had 2 kids at that time, and it's like we're sitting there, and okay, the show comes on. Within 30 seconds, our youngest was like, I'm going to go get something to eat. Within about a minute, the oldest was like, okay, Dad, this is great. I'm going to the other room. And my wife even got up and left. I'm like, it kind of put things in perspective for me that, you know what? This is...
They made sure your head didn't get too big.
Exactly. And which is good because, you know, it's so easy to get the big head, overconfident, and, oh, you know, I'm a bag of chips and then some. You know, I'll never forget winning the Emmy Award was probably... for me, the most recent accolade that really did something for me. And here's why, because I was able to share that with my team. It wasn't me. It wasn't just me. There was a team of people that won that. And so for me, that's what's valuable. And I think the other part too, James, is I realized that, you know, anything that comes to me is a gift from God. That's just the way I view it. And so anything that happens, you know, an accolade or an opportunity, it's like, you know, I truly believe God is going to open the doors he wants me to walk through. And that's just my faith. That's where I'm at.
And you're living in a state of gratitude. And when you
Absolutely.
live in a state of gratitude, whatever you want to relate that to,
Yes.
No matter what, you are naturally going to draw better things in your life because you're being thankful, man. You're not just going out there being like, you know, I should be given this. I should be. Yeah, that attitude, unfortunately,
It's old.
Real fast. You know what I mean? And you see it in a lot of places in the world. You that entitlement feeling of like, I deserve this. We really don't deserve that much. It's what we work for. It's what we give. It's how we live that, you know, determines our reality.
Yeah.
So I can see it. You keep that feeling of, you know what, I'm grateful for what I'm doing. Now let's go conquer some more.
Yeah, let's go kick some, you know what. And so I'm always looking for helping. I mean, how do I help others? Because really, I'm constantly seeking win-win. If I'm just winning, I'm not happy. If I'm the only one winning, I'm really not happy. If you're just winning, I'm not happy, right? Let's create the win-win. Let's see what we can do together to say, boy, you know, what you do and what I do, boy, this could be even better as a result.
I do the same thing in my business. It parallels like the amount of people that are in my life that have been with me since the basement days. Like since I put one mat down in my basement and I was teaching martial arts, so many of them are still the people by my side now. It's because I try to create those in any business dealings I do. I don't really think like a businessman. I've actually had a lot of businessmen tell me, you know, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not good for margins.
Right.
I make win-wins. And what that does is encourages if you give your best and I give my best, we both succeed together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instead of just like, why don't you give your absolute best and I'll reap the success of it, or vice versa.
Yeah.
How about I do all the work and I bust my ass, you don't contribute much at all, and then it's a big win for you.
Right.
Well, the more we can work together as good people and create win-wins, not only is it better, it makes you feel better. You're not holding on to feelings of like, man, I'm doing 10 times the amount for this person, or I'm not really happy with this deal, I just accepted it. You know, I think we need to shift a little bit of the old business thinking and look more towards relationships, character, networks, just like back to your rules. Like, you know, if you're the right type of person and you put perspective and you use a network, life has so many paths for you. And you just got to pick one to walk down.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're reminded of that often when we have people that come from another country that come here and create great success, because they understand that this is a land of opportunity, right? Of, boy, I can come here from whatever experience I had in the past, depression or whatever I was involved with, and I can come here and whatever I work to do, I can create success. And we're reminded of that often from those people, because it's great to remind us, because I think we get a little soft and a little comfortable. You know, one of the things that I've had some moments in my life that were like seminal moments, like they really had a change, caused a change in my life. And one of them was one of the last years when I was a school counselor. I had a 10-year-old girl come into my office. And she came in. It's one I saw around often. I mean, I'd see her around. She always dressed really snappy. She wasn't very tall. She was, you know, especially in comparison to me. But she wasn't very tall
compared to you.
Very few of us. Depends on which basketball court you're hanging around.
I had my professional fighter, who's the #1 ranked heavyweight in the state of Michigan here, and you walked in the door, and the first thing he said to you was, "Wow, I'm not used to people that make me feel small."
Yeah,
I mean,
no, and so it's well, I'm average height though. That's the sad part, right? And if you look at that level, but for basketball. But this girl was 10 years old, always dressed snappy, always looked, you know, always had a bounce in her step. But I could tell something that day when she swung by my office, that something was off, right? She looked a little disheveled, her hair just wasn't dressed. So sure enough, I said, hey, what's going on? And so we started talking a little bit, and sure enough, I started hearing more of why she was feeling that way. And as I started asking her questions, she started talking about how she really was upset and down, and she actually had talked about taking her own life. She had, suicide ideation. So
At
10 years
old.
old, yeah. So needless to say, I put on my counseling hat and really started going through the risk assessment with her. There's a line of questioning you can ask to assess the level of risk. And sure enough, the risk assessment showed that she was really high risk because she not only talked about doing it, but had a plan and a day and how she was going to do it. So she had it well worked out. So needless to say, at 10 years old, I contacted a parent. We got the parent in there, and we started talking about what was going on. And one of the key questions I asked her, which has literally changed my life since, her answer, was I asked her, I said, at 10 years old, what caused you to believe that this is what you wanted to do, that you wanted to take your own life? And again, the answer she gave me just changed me. She looked at me, she goes, I felt like I didn't have any other options. Like I had no other options. Well, you can bet I gave her lots of options that day, and her mother, and she's doing great now. In fact, I just saw her again recently, not too long ago, just ran into him. But, that story, the reason why I tell that story is it caused me to realize that, everybody has options in their life. We all have options. We all have opportunities, and it's what we do with those opportunities. And it's not just what we do with them, but it's how others help you understand those opportunities. And for me, helping that 10-year-old girl understand there was other options changed her life, literally. And all of us have that power. All of us have that opportunity to not just change our own lives with that attitude, but others as well.
That story also shows how badly your perception in your own mind can get distorted.
Yes.
If you live in your own mind and you're not putting it out to the world, you're not putting it down on paper, you're not speaking to people that care about you, you can create this story in your mind that says there are no other options, that maybe I shouldn't go on, that this thing isn't meant for me.
Yes.
But when you reach out to others and you find people that love you and care about you, or that are, that want to help you get things back on track, you tend to find out that the reality that's here is not real.
It's not real.
That's not the real answer. Because
lie.
you and I, as we heard that story, I was like, no, there's tens of thousands of options.
Right.
We could probably bounce back and forth all the things that she could become in this life, right?
Yes.
But the mind can be, either your best friend or your worst nightmare.
Absolutely.
So that comes back to the idea of community and network. Like, man, if you're struggling, reach out to people. There's never in my life ever been someone that reached out to me that was struggling that I didn't try to help out. It's just in my heart. How could I not? Because I know what it's like to struggle.
Yeah.
So it's like people need to remember that even though you feel alone, that's a false reality.
And this isn't a public service announcement for that, but I mean, there's no question. There's always hope. There's always hope.
100%. Well, Kurt, this has been such an incredible podcast. We've done over an hour. We're at an hour and 15 minutes already, effortlessly.
Yeah.
Just enjoying dialogue. If someone hears your rules, hears you speak, and says, like, listen, I've got to bring that guy in to speak to my company, my professional athletes, my sports team, what is the best way for them to reach out to you? How do they get a hold of you? I'm asking you to brag a little bit here, but plug your stuff, brag. Yeah. How do people contact you?
Yeah, probably the easiest is my website, kurtdavid.com, KURTDAVID, kurtdavid.com. I mentioned about the other company that I own or co-founded, purposepoint.com. And that's a company, an organization that is revolving around helping organizations and individuals find their purpose, and professional development is what we do with that. And so there's two different angles.
And let's also shout out your television shows, because recently you just had me down on Mind Matters with Dr. Michelle. What shows are you producing? How can people tune in and watch these?
Well, that's great. I mean, I have most of my shows are sports type history shows. So like From Glory Days, interviewing former athletes. That's on Amazon Prime right now, From Glory Days. We also have one of our pivots during the pandemic was to create a sports streaming service. So we have our own sports streaming service called Glory Days TV. I think you and I might have talked about that. I'd love to get your podcast on there, actually. I think it'd be a great fit. And it's called glorydaystv.com, so that's another avenue. I'm executive producing a mental health show called Mind Matters with Dr. Michelle, which you were a guest on, where we have different guests from different backgrounds, PTSD, depression, and it's always real people, real issues, real solutions. That's what we like to do with the show. That's airing weekly here in Detroit. It's actually airing nationally on different channels as well. Nationally, we're in the Caribbean. I just had somebody talk about they were down in St. Martin, and they saw the show on TV down there and said, hey, wait a minute, what's your show doing on down here? It's like, yeah, we're down in the Caribbean too. So, got a couple documentaries I'm working on, sports documentaries. One is the Negro Baseball League. That's a huge one we're working on right now. And then there's a couple smaller ones as well. Just having fun, everything I do has to, my tagline is inspiring others through the stories of highly successful people that live a life of significance. And that's the content that I want to create or be involved with. Creating significance. In other words, if it's entertaining, great, but I want something more than that.
Man, that's stellar. It's stellar. I enjoyed this dialogue thoroughly today.
Oh, my pleasure.
You're a supernatural speaker.
Thank you.
You know, and I mean, hopefully this reaches a lot of people, because just getting them to know a lot of the things that are coming down the pipe are going to be huge. You know what I mean? So what you talk about with transition periods, what you talk about like setting a simple acronym so you can't forget it,
Yes.
It's brilliant. So truly, it was my honor to have you in the studio today, and we'll wrap this podcast up.
My pleasure. Thanks again, James.